Um, yeah, so I'm wanting to do this series of interviewing members so that everybody can get to know each other. And imagining it like right now, it feels like I'm in the center because I know so many of the people that are coming in. And what I'm wanting to do is like I see it as a fabric instead of a circle with me in the middle.
Yes.
And so what I'm wanting to do is pull people together and and then just kind of back up, you know, and
Yes.
let the fabric, exist and people, follow their own curiosity and, the common interests that and
Mhm.
projects that might come out of it. Um, and the fastest way that I think we can all get to know each other better is for us to post these little videos. And then people can, anybody that comes into our group at any time can look in the archives
Yes.
and begin to meet people.
Good.
So,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks. I'm glad. I have enjoyed getting to know the people that I have, and I do hope to be down in the studio sometime soon. It's a wonderful space. Wonderful space. Yeah.
Yeah, I feel like magic is happening here because like you can feel it. It's just like we just feel giddy like little kids when we're in here playing. So,
I'm so excited to see some of the things that are being created there. I'm glad you're sharing on Facebook and other places the artwork in particular. And yes.
yeah, yeah. I just have been asking permission this past week of people to share other people's work on Instagram and Facebook so we can kind of have a gallery for the people who are coming here, just
Yes.
start loading our Instagram up with everybody's work that's coming out.
Right.
Without the temptation to sell, like that's the thing we talked about. It's like,
But people are admiring it, and they want to own a piece for their wall.
yeah, but
I
I
you
go
don't
ahead.
do
No,
that.
I do, but I am so easily tempted at that becoming the priority over the play for me. And
Mhm.
so I name it so that I can remind myself to um, to continue playing and let if somebody wants to buy it, that's great. But as soon as I start thinking about what other people might want on their wall, then
Yeah.
it's not the best practice for me in the making of it. It kind of takes that joy and curiosity and play off of the table for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
The organization has the perfect name, We Practice Life, because we're doing what we all really want to do, which is to be our authentic, natural selves, and yet feel that we're contributing and connecting. And this enables us to do it, like you say, in a way that it feels very deep, but it doesn't feel like exhausting work. It feels rewarding, it feels replenishing. So,
Yeah. It's so good to hear those words because that's why we're doing it. So, yay. Awesome. Well, I'm really grateful that you were willing to kind of guinea pig this and be one of the first people to go through this process. So I'll ask you some questions, and it can lead us wherever you want to go with it.
okay.
So, um, we use a lot of inspirational quotes, we in this work, and I'm curious, what is an inspirational quote that is like one of your favorites?
Well, I've been an English teacher for most of my life, and so I have lots of inspirational quotes and lots of poets and writers that I really love. But I would say that my life quote is one by Rilke, the German poet, and I like this quote so much that I put it on some tiles and fired the tiles and turned it into a backsplash in my kitchen. But the quote says, "Because being here means so much, and because all that's here, vanishing so quickly, seems to need us and strangely concerns us. So to me, that quote is sort of answers any question you could care to ask. It's like, why should I do this? Why should I do that? What is the reason for that? Because being here means so much. And because all that's here vanishing so quickly seems to need us and strangely concerns us. So it's sort of like, this is why I do whatever it is that I do.
I love that. And I've never heard that one before, which, I mean, I've heard a lot of Rilke, quotes, but I've never heard that one before. So I'm going to need to get that in writing so I can look at it as often as you are. That's great. I love that. So as you know, because you've taken some of our courses and you've worked on developing some curriculum for us, that we focus a lot on ways that we grow and develop. And many of us have gone through some big shifts. So that kind of leads to this question of what ways would you want to reinvent yourself? And this can include personal, professional, family, whatever. And so in what ways would you want to reinvent yourself? And in what ways have you already reinvented yourself?
Well, my life is so different than the way it used to be because I left my marriage after many years, and I lived in North Carolina for decades and came back to Texas, which is where my family was. But I didn't have a plan for what was going to be my next step. And so I did feel in many ways that I was like starting over again. But I was so glad to see this question because it made me realize that I have not been reinventing myself. I've been finally just coming into who I always was. And it was like I was just this far away from really being my full self. And that full self is still out there a little bit more, but I feel that that's really what's happening. So I don't characterize it as a reinvention so much as just a full becoming. And I like framing it that way rather than saying that, everything has crashed and burned and it's all gone. And so now you have to start all over again because everything that has happened to me seems to have had its purpose in a way. And some of it wasn't good, but I feel like it's all been strengthening in the long run. And it's made me admire myself in ways that I maybe didn't, and made me bring myself forward in ways that I might not have otherwise. And it's good to have community when you're doing something like that. And so We Practice Life is a wonderful place where people have been through hard things at times, and they understand and can hold that for you, and they don't judge you for it, and they can even celebrate it because it can make you bring out things that are amazing, really.
Yeah, I love that the way you redefined and used a different verb there rather than reinvent, because what what I'm kind of reflecting on is I often talk about the big shift that happened to me in 2007, and I saw that as more of a reinventing. But here I am 14 years later, and it really does feel like a returning. It felt like a reinvention then because it was so different than the way I had been living.
Uh-huh.
And now it's like really embracing who, finding who I was all along.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I love that, the way that you reframed it. And I got a GIF or a GIF, however the right way is to say that. I think the debate's still open. From Richard celebrating something yesterday in this little video that he texted me. had this little girl with curly hair, like getting so excited.
Uh-huh.
And when you talk about doing this work in community and getting where, being in a place where you're vulnerable, right? Um, you're not the only one that's discovering deeply who you are. Other people around you are seeing you more fully, and
Yes.
then they remind you.
And you rejoice for other people as they discover things that bring them joy and that they are able to do and feel empowered. So yes, the spirit of play, which we all had when we were children, and then either it was trained away from us or we had expectations that we bought into. We thought, oh, that's not something I should be doing. It won't make any money, or that's not something that really I should be doing. But yet, if you really listen to yourself and follow your path, to to be playful and to be joyful, in the long run, that should never be wrong. And we practice life gives you permission to sort of examine, where did you come up with that mistaken idea that you should not do this art that you wanted to do, or that the writing that you're doing is not good enough to be valuable to the world. Where did you come up with that idea? It's really safe to do it here. So,
Yeah, yeah. I have goosebumps because I'm so grateful that we have such safe spaces and so much support when we're exploring things that, can bring up a lot of pain and suffering along with them. But it surprises me how often I'm not repressing that sadness, but it turns into laughter. Like,
yeah,
it's been so fun.
yeah.
Um, yeah. So, I'm looking at some of these other questions. So we're talking about looking back in our lives, right? So, what do you have or know now that you wish you did then?
Well, I'm very close to my family and I love them dearly, but I realized that a lot of the things that they presented to me as ways to be didn't really fit me. And yet I felt obligated to make them happy or to follow along with the beliefs and ideas that they had put forward. And so I realized I wish that I had known that it was really going to be okay. I'm not a rebellious type of person. I like people to be happy and to be happy with me, but it's really okay to go off in your own direction. And so I wish that I had felt more supported in that when I was younger. So you just have to say, okay, well, uh, you didn't know it then, but you know it now. So go, girl. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, that's great.
Mhm.
Can you think of a moment when you shifted perspective on something where you thought you were really certain about it and attached to it, and then you saw it differently?
Well, I think that my self perspective has changed a lot because I always did see myself from another person's point of view and saw myself as a teacher, as a wife, as a mother, as a volunteer, and always framed my identity according to what other people needed from me. And it always felt selfish if I framed my identity according to what was inside of me that I wanted to bring forward. And so it's been a journey and it's been work to be able to say, you know what, this whole person, you know, that is who I want to be, and it's okay to go for that. So I feel more empowered to do that. So the moment that I realized that was probably when I finally decided to leave my marriage, and I realized, you know what, this this field is level now, and I do not have to make a decision for somebody else. I can make a decision for me. And despite the circumstances, that was really hard for me because I've always been so committed to other people's process. I mean, especially as a teacher, you understand how that can be. You want your students to be successful. You try to help them and nurture them. You don't always do the same for yourself. And so to turn my attention to myself and say, okay, I get to do what's best for me, even if I don't know what that is entirely, but I'm going to go find out. So I can remember when that moment happened.
Hmm. I'm
Is that too
I'm
much
just,
information?
no, not at all. I'm just imagining, some of what you said and relating to that sense of liberation and um, kind of like feeling a bit ungrounded, like, like it's so new.
Yes. Yeah.
Um, and
Yeah.
and there's plenty of guideposts
Uh-huh.
along the way when you're thinking about how you're going to serve other people because they're always showing up. Like, there's always indications for how you can live in ways that support others. But when it's you, just for you, and you
Yeah.
haven't done that before, it's a strange combination of of freedom and fear, I
Yes.
guess.
It's really not selfish to offer your own gifts to the world and to make yourself happy. It's really not selfish to make yourself happy. How about that?
What a novel concept,
Oh, yeah.
especially for good Southern women like us. Oh man. So how have you explored your gifts and found these things, these interests? I mean, like the question is about gifts, talents, skills, and superpowers, but I'm imagining you discover those when you really shift to look at yourself and what it is you enjoy doing and what it is you want to spend your time
Mhm.
sharing or doing.
Well, I've always done it in small measures. I've always written, but a lot of the writing that I have done has been because somebody else needed something from me. I worked for a while for a newspaper and wrote book, travel, and art reviews. And so whenever somebody wanted something, I was there. I would go to the gallery. I would interview the people. I would so the newspaper would be happy. But I wasn't always working on my own things. I would do a lot of private art. I made handmade books. I did collage pots. I did altered art. A lot of those kinds of things, which brought me a lot of joy. I've always loved working in social justice. That has brought me a sense of satisfaction because I could see big picture vision a lot of times that other people didn't have. But like I said, this was sort of like in small pieces here and there.
Mhm.
So it's only been really in very recent years that I have more dedicated myself to like bringing the things that are important to me and the things that I want to say into a fuller vision, and to being with other people like the people that we practice life who have that same kind of idea for themselves. It's like they have things that they want to do, they have things that they want to work through, or things that they want to create. And so to gather that energy in a way that feeds me, but that my energy feeds other people, that's a really wonderful thing that the organization does.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Um, so um, this last question, um, I'm so glad that you chose this, and like just everybody in here will know our process at some point because I intend to interview everybody. But from the long list of questions, you chose a few to focus on, and this last one is a really big one for me. I'm curious about all of these, but I'm really curious about this one, your answer to this. How do you discern what's yours to do and what's best addressed by others' superpowers? How do you discern what's yours to do?
Well, you and I are alike, Brooke, because we love to help people and we want everything to work out for other people. And so we will take on other people's issues and problems. And so what I have started to do is just simply asking people, do you want my advice on this? So sometimes they will just tell you, this is not what I just want you to listen to me. That's all you need to do. You don't need to solve this for me. So a lot of times, just the way that I discern it is by simply saying, please tell me, what you need from me, because otherwise I will make your problem my own. And so that has worked a lot. That has worked really well with my daughters in particular. You know how it is as a mother with our kids. We feel their pain with whatever it is. And so also too, I have started to develop just a sense of being a better listener and being curious about how people figure out their own problems themselves. So a lot of times I just make myself stop instead of jumping in. And so I know that a lot of the discussions that we have in our writing group, and some of the circles, and we practice life, a lot of it simply is just allowing the other person to speak, and maybe just mirroring back to them the things that they are saying, and see if they can have an insight, and realizing, what, they are working their work, and my job is to listen. My job is not to fix it. And I'm so glad to hear that a lot of times you will say that is sort of like a supposition going in that you will share, saying, we each have our own work to do, and we're all such compassionate people that our impulse is to help each other. But sometimes it doesn't serve people well when we try to do their job.
Yeah, yeah. It's definitely um, a temptation. And I think one of the things you said earlier about being able to see the big picture, like I think you were referring to your work in social justice. Like sometimes you can see you can see the big picture and maybe see some threads of things, and it's sometimes difficult to um, not rush in and
Right.
like I think that pause, the stopping, the witnessing, the listening. um I almost screamed amen when you said just
Yeah.
stop.
Well, we all have superpowers, but if somebody else is always going to rush in like Superman and fix it or rescue us, then we'll never discover our own superpowers. So, in a way, the best thing we can do is to withhold ourselves, and let other people do the thing that they can do, so that they can realize that they have it. They have it. We don't have to give it to them. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And that's something like that seems to be, either I'm noticing it. It's kind of like when you're on the highway and you get a new car and then all of a sudden you see all of those, like a million more of them than you used to see because you're paying attention. I think this thing about not fixing and saving, and seeing others as fully capable of following their own inner guide, and respecting the process, and holding space and listening.
Yeah.
That just seems to be popping up in everything that I'm participating in right now. So in some ways, I feel like I'm going to always mix my metaphors, but I feel like I'm just steeping in that
Yeah.
concept right now. And and I think that's why we kind of reiterate those agreements whenever we have,
Mhm.
circles or reflection time on our practice.
Mhm.
We just I have to reiterate that every time, to remind myself, um, what a beautiful um, recognition of the superpowers. And there's faith and trust that we're all going to get where we're going.
Yeah. All that being said, I realize that I do have wisdom to share. And I do feel that it's, what am I here for if not to let people know the things that I have found? Why should I keep it close to my chest when I could, for whatever it's worth to you, you don't have to you don't have to feel this way. It doesn't have to resonate with you, but it might. And so,
Yeah.
you know, I try to pick my moments here and there. It's like, this is something that I have learned on my journey, and maybe it's meaningful to you. So I love it when people cannot dictate to me, but can share with me. And that's one of the most useful and beautiful things about these circles that we practice life has, is that we get to benefit from so much wisdom from so many different traditions and life experiences.
Yeah. Yeah. And I love that we can recognize when we're being invited to share those things,
Mhm.
and when we're being invited simply to listen so that someone is able to hear their own words back to them, because it in many ways, um, we have what we need inside and we just need to hear it
Yeah. Yeah.
spoken. And then other times, um, we reach out and we want to learn from each other. And that's why I'm always putting, we're learners and leaders. Like all of us are learners and leaders for
Well,
this reason.
these are very, by and large, you have gathered a very mindful group of people, and they have a really great sense of balance. As when should I share, when should I reveal, when should I listen. And so you can feel that ebb and flow, quite a lot in the groups. And like I said at the beginning, I come away with a feeling that this was time well spent. This has been enriching. This has been something that gives me a sense of peace and potential. So yeah.
I love it. Peace and potential.
Uh-huh.
I feel like that's a good place to stop.
Okay.